Hello, people of the world, and welcome to the first episode of Keeping Alive. In this podcast, I will have guest speakers tell their story of what truly keeps them alive. They will share what their life means to them, as well as what inspires them to keep on living. I'm your host, Hayden Garratt, and I hope that from these discussions you will learn a thing or two to help your life and your own journey in keeping alive. Today's guest is one of the most influential and inspiring people I know. She was born in a small town, Jackson, Michigan, with a strong faith and a close-knit family. As a child, she had dreams of one day seeing the world. As of now, she's been all over the world and won't stop moving to this day. I don't think she'd like me sharing her age, but let's just say her looks could fool you. She still goes on 2 walks a day and has more of an active lifestyle than most millennials. I'd like everyone to meet my grandma, Carolyn Best. Hello. I can't hear you. No. You should try putting... Do you hear me? This is good, though. This is good. This is good. A good start. Do you have your headphones?
There.
There you go.
Okay. We're ready.
Then we're ready. Okay. First of all, how are you?
I'm good. I'm
Good. Cool.
I was looking forward to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to get started.
Thank you for choosing me.
So let's start. I have a very open-ended question to start this out, and I know we can go a lot of different ways with. You got a lot of stories, and that's why I wanted to talk to you first. So that's my first question right now is going to be, what's keeping you alive at this moment?
Well, actually, that's an easy question to answer because I think it's probably what's kept me alive my entire life. And I call it my favorite F words. First of all, my faith, my family, my friends, fun. All of those things I think contribute to who we are. And that keeps me alive.
Yeah. And how do you live by those F words day to day?
I don't even think about them. I think they're such a part of me, and I think they've been a part of me my entire life. Like you had mentioned in the introduction, I came from a family of faith. Some of my childhood memories that stand out are all based on faith. As little children, for example, we played Mass. I mean, most kids don't play Mass. We played Mass. Using fish food as the communion and water goblets as the chalice. And I was always the nun and my brother was always the priest, and all our cousins were involved. And it seemed to be something that went on every single weekend. That's probably an exaggeration, but it's that strong of a memory to me.
Yeah.
And on my first communion, I mean, I remember almost every detail. I can still to this day sing every song that we sang on our first communion day. So based on those memories, that was probably the early stepping stones of my faith. There's been times in my life that, like everybody, I've questioned that, and usually during tragedies. And I think during those times, there's always been a faith person in my life, a priest or a nun or friend or somebody that I would say something to that would have the perfect thing to say to me. And that always helped me to get back on track. I can give you an example if you want. But
yeah, let's get an example.
First one that I thought of, I lost my first child, my only son, very painful. Went 3 weeks past due. In today's society, that wouldn't have happened. Wasn't allowed to hold him. I was angry. I was angry with God to think that I would go that many weeks pregnant, counting every day till he was born, fixing up his room, baby showers, all of those things. And then at the end, not even being able to hold him was really painful. So I was angry, and I said to a priest who was a good friend of mine, I am so angry with God. And he said, that's okay. God understands that. That really helped me. That really helped me. And that helped me to move right on. And I don't mean that there weren't some setbacks along the way, but that put me back on track.
Yeah. And how did you get back on track? Was it just the priest's words, or was it something that you kept telling yourself and kept moving yourself on?
I think throughout my life, from the time I was a child, I've moved on. Um, um, in my family, it sounds mean to say this, but we didn't cry that much. It was like get over it,
Mm-hmm.
and that sounds so cruel. And yet, I think it does make you a stronger person to maybe get all of the into your head all of the facts, so to speak, so that you can deal. For every dark cloud, there's a lining. And I think as I grew older and continue to grow older, I see silver linings. I see them sometimes, not trying to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but I see them when others don't. And I always want to say to them, snap out of it. Can't you see this or that?
Yeah.
And I have to be careful because I think that's not always a plus when you feel like, get over your bad self, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that
Mm-hmm.
that those things are what made me who I am today. And I think the other thing that my dad was so full of piss and vinegar. I don't know how to say it other than that.
Mm-hmm.
He was funny, but he was an alcoholic, and I didn't like that part of
Mm-hmm.
him. But he had a great personality. And I think I learned from him people skills from the time I was little. And to this day, at 80, I can tell you almost every single person that lived in every single house going around the block of where I lived in Jackson, Michigan.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's how so you had the culture of every single people knew each other. Just about a week ago, you showed me like every house, and you were naming every single person on the Google Maps of who lived where and who you would steal brownies from and whatnot.
Yeah.
And let's talk about
Well,
that culture.
one of the things that I
Yeah.
did, I was a chubby little thing, and when I look back, I know why. Because as I went around, if they had a brownie or whatever to offer me, I didn't turn anything down. And in those days, because you had a village kind of keeping out an eye out for you, I mean, I was 4 or 5 years old and walking the block to see my grandmother, not with anybody with me, and I would go down and sit on her front little bitty steps and wait for her to come home for lunch and have lunch with her. And on the way home, Dr. O'Mara would wave at me, and I'd go up on the porch and have a cookie with him. And I mean, this is just the way, this is the part of society that's been robbed um, of the young people today. There are in some areas villages, but in some areas, because we through industry and people moving to different cities and what have you, that village was kind of separated. There's a lot of good about today's society too, but I think that's one thing that if I could give my own kids and grandkids, it would have been a village because it definitely had its effect. Um, the brownie story that you're talking about, in my one true confession of the one and only thing that I ever stole, had to do with Mrs. Laughlin, who was an old lady that lived across the street from us. And we lived in a family of fun and laughter and imagination. So we unfortunately imagined her to be a witch. And she actually lived up to that because she sounded like one, and she looked like one, and she talked like
Uh,
this.
do a little bit more of an impression.
I will. She always carried her groceries home and always looked for my brothers. Now, keep in mind, I was about 6 or 7, and I did not want to carry her groceries. And she would go, "Oh, there you are," and like this, and "Could you boys just help me with my groceries?" Well, in my family, if an adult asked you to carry their groceries, you didn't say no. So this one day, I saw her coming, and my brothers went around, so I hid behind a bush because no way, I did not want to help her. And she said, "Oh, there you are, Carolyn. Can I get you to carry my groceries?" I was like, "Don't want to carry her groceries." So anyway, into her gray house up on the hill I went. I'm sure the hill was no more than 3 feet, but in my mind it was big. And took her groceries into the kitchen, and she handed me a banana. I didn't like bananas. I was too polite to say, "I don't want your banana." But in her living room, under a crystal glass, was a brownie about this thick. I like brownies. So I thought, I want that brownie, but I knew it was rude to ask her. So I went outside with my banana, and I'm sitting there, and I could hear her singing up in her upstairs, kind of like a witch would sing. And I ran into the house, and I grabbed her brownie, and I went home, and I'm chawing down in that thing, and it was so yummy. And my brother Tom, who was 3 years older than me, came around the corner, and he said, "Where'd you get the brownie?" And I told him the story, and he went, "Not the poison brownie."
Oh
I
no.
thought, what? So I think I waited the whole day to die. I knew I would eaten that brownie. So that was my lesson. I never stole another thing in my entire life.
Well, that's good. It's good to learn at a young age. It really it gets in your noggin fast.
Yeah, I have another example of learning a lesson too. You will never find my initials on a tree or anywhere else based on what happened to me in the 2nd grade. We would go to mass every day, and our St. John's school went from the 1st grade to the 12th grade. So they would mix us with the older kids. And so I was in the 1st or 2nd grade, and all of the girls were carving their initials, the older girls, in the pews of the church. I wasn't, but they stopped. So I got my bobby pin out, and I was doing a great big old giant C. Well, they stopped because the principal was standing behind them, and how I didn't see her, I don't know. But anyway, they called in my mother, and my mother agreed that I should have to polish the pews of the church.
Oh no.
I did. Guess what? I scratch any ideas of me putting initials in anything anymore. I never did after that. For sure.
It probably changed your signature a little bit.
Yes.
Yes. So let's get to I have a fun question that I like to ask. I usually relate this with movies, but I want to be open to everybody's realm of what they usually do in their lives. So what I have is, what work of art has had an impact on your life? So this could be a movie, a book, a song, a poem, just anything that has really connected to you and maybe even inspired you.
Yeah, I have more than one. The movie that most impacted me was To Kill a Mockingbird. The Gregory Peck, for whatever reason, reminded me a lot of my dad in looks, and it even reminded me a little bit of Jackson. So it just had a lifetime impact. I could watch that movie every month and still have the same strong feelings about it.
It's very much like a small town, everybody knowing each other kind of environment.
That movie had a major impact on me, and even the kids and the mischief that they got into together. I mean, we as children went outside to play. Half the time had our lunch packed for us and didn't come back again till dinner. We went up to the park. We weren't chaperoned. again, not everybody kind of watched out for each other, to the point that my mother seemed to know everything, and she told me that a little bird told her. So everywhere I went, I was looking for that bird because I was convinced that that's how she knew so much about me. But so that movie had a major impact. The poem that most impacted me was Elizabeth Barrett Browning's How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Count the Ways. I love thee to the very depths and breadths my very soul can reach. I love that. I love that whole poem.
And how does that connect with you?
Well, I think that it's what we all want. I think that's when we get married, it's what we all think we had, or have, in some cases have, but in my case, I guess I'd say had. Um, it's emotional for me.
Yeah.
It pulls at my heart. And when you say impacted me, it impacted me. Yeah.
So my next question would be, what is something that you've kept alive throughout your life? This could be a hobby, a current, like a certain event that has impacted you, someone that you looked up to as a role model that you've kept on throughout the years and made you who you are.
Well, there's no doubt that this is an easy question for me to answer in more ways than one. My grandmother was widowed. I'm sorry I don't remember at what age, but she had 4 kids and she had never worked. And my grandfather, before he died, owned Daly and Rutherford, which was a sheet metal company. He was the Daly side. There was another one, a gentleman that was part of it named Rutherford. Anyway, my grandmother ended up going in and taking that business over and running it till she was in her 70s. So, whoa, I like that. I just loved her strength, and I loved her. I loved the time we had together. I mean, when I would meet her at lunch, she would just sit there and I was the only one in her world. At least that's the way she made me feel. She was an incredible seamstress, incredible. She made almost all my clothes. My first communion dress, I could almost draw in detail. That's how special it was. And because of that, I think I learned a lot about sewing, so much so that with no background, I ended up in couture and could sell couture clothes based on the knowledge that I had gotten as a child from my grandmother. And
Wow.
why different seams are important, why different fabrics are important. And I ended up, when I was with one company, buying their being involved in buying their fabrics. This is my schooling was in nursing. I didn't have any couture fashion experience, so grandma taught me that. The other thing, besides her strength and her faith, she could be in the middle of prayer, in the middle of a rosary, whatever. If I peeked in her room, she put it aside and invited me in. Never giving me the feeling that I had interrupted anything, but also encouraging me to pray during times, especially when you're in high school and you think some of the little problems that come up are the biggest thing that's ever happened to you. She was one that could really just calm me down and put it all in perspective. And so she had a major influence on me, and to this day. So I think every time I sew, and I don't sew as much as she does, and I'm not as good as she was, but I think of her. When I'm looking at fabrics and picking out, like if I'm making something for somebody, I don't just make something for somebody. I try to make it something that's personal for that person. And that was something that she did too. So I feel like I'm part of her. And as I get older, I must admit, I see her in the mirror almost every day. When I look in it, I go, "Hi, Grandma Daly, how are you?" You have totally absorbed my body. Thank you. But anyway, at a party, She was a piano player. She had never had a lesson in her life, and she'd just get up and she would sing, and so she was always the hit of every party.
Hmm.
Based on what you said for traditions, I think all my traditions go back to her. Um, when we were little kids, everything was at my grandmother's house. If I grieve anything, it's that. It's just hard to get everybody to come together like we did in the village. So there were 15 grandchildren. We were all there every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. When we were children, we had some ornaments that were passed down generation to generation, but mostly we made them. I mean, um, we strung popcorn,
Hmm.
we hung tinsel, things like that. Our lights were probably not as safe as they are today, but my dad would string the lights up. Um, the Christmas was not about gifts. It was more about the birth of Christ. Everything was around the nativity. Everything was around church. We got one gift every year, which was beyond exciting. And because of that, I can tell you what I got as a child almost every single Christmas because that's how much it meant to me.
Hmm.
Um, Good part of my early childhood, my dad was sick with rheumatic fever and was out of work for quite a while. So to get anything at Christmas was wonderful. So it was more about singing. Even when we all got together at grandma's, everybody exchanged names. So everybody got one gift there too. So it was more about the camaraderie.
Hmm.
And I miss that. I miss that a lot.
Do you still get that day to day now, or is it less so?
When you say, do I get a day to day? It isn't like I don't have a special relationship with my family and my grandchildren and what have you. I do. I'm very, very, very proud of that. But is it like it was then? No, it
Hmm.
isn't. And some of it's because the world is so busy, you know. Um, so I try to understand that. I try to understand that. And it's just sometimes you have to be careful because as you get to be 80 and you try to give advice, um, it sounds like you're trying to force who you are on others. And I don't want that. I don't
Hmm.
want that. I think the traditions of today will be something the young people of today carry forward. I just know for me that for 80 years now, they still are in my heart.
Well, let's keep going to accomplishments. What kind of like I can name a few, but as far as you looking at your life, what kind of accomplishments do you see that you've done through these years of living?
Well, my greatest accomplishment is being a mom. I don't even know how to put that in words. And um, the reward is when you see your own daughters having children and they also are good moms, then I think I must have done something right. And I think that I am truly blessed because I feel close to my grandkids, and I don't know that all seniors experience that.
Yeah.
I do, there are times that I wish we were all closer, but I always feel that if I text one of my grandkids, they get right back to me. It isn't like they're good about calling, but it's part of the modern world. Do I prefer them to be sitting in my living room and chatting? I do. I do. I especially like to do one-on-one with kids. I get to know them better and they get to know me better. And I think that tradition is important. And I think even this podcast might be important because who knows? Maybe 50 years from now, long after I've sprouted my wings, a great great grandchild will be looking at this podcast and knowing about a little bit about where they came from.
Yeah, and that's essentially that's why I called it keeping alive, and that's why I want to do it. I mean, I there's everybody has a story, and if give somebody an hour and a few questions, and we all can learn from that story. I'm learning a lot already, and we talk every week, so it's I'm sure a lot of other people listening to this will get a lot more even than I'm getting.
Sometimes when I look back at my own life, I don't mean it in awe like I'm in awe with myself. I'm not. I'm in awe what I have been exposed to. I mean, little Carolyn Barnard from Jackson, Michigan, did this, or went here or went there.
Yeah.
And while we were talking about To Kill a Mockingbird, when I was about 32, I met Gregory Peck. And he was every single thing I wanted him to be. He was um, not about himself. He looked me in the eye. I told him that was absolutely my favorite movie. He was very humble. I have met other stars and other people that have been in my life that are narcissists and so much about themselves, and he was not like that. So he had an impact on me based on that.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Um, in my marriage, I had the opportunity to meet other people too. That was really impacting, and one of them was during the United Airlines Hawaii Open. We worked day by day for 5 days with Arnold Palmer, and he was another one. He was not about himself. He was very down to earth,
All about
very
his lemonade.
all just even in those days. Uh, that's what he had, but
I'm
it
just
wasn't
kidding.
a big deal because that is something they do today, that they drink today. But anyway, he was very real. Loved his wife. Had been with her for, I think they were married 40 some years before she died. But he talked so kindly about his wife, and I think that is. I don't look back at my life and say there's been many failures, but I see divorce as a failure, and it's unfortunate. I did not get married to get divorced. So I just, for my own children and grandchildren, um, sometimes, sometimes the grass looks greener, but sometimes the flowers are right inside your own environment, and you just need to water them a little more. You just need to um, communicate and make sure it grows. And when it doesn't, it's affects not just you, affects everybody. Affects it's a domino effect. So anyway, that was a part of Arnold Palmer I really like, his commitment to his wife and his children. And I think it's important. And I think it's important in today's world too. And again, um, we're going through one of the biggest tragedies ever to hit this world. And I think a lot of good's going to come out of it. And I think the best thing that's going to come out of it is people are returning to faith because they're seeing how powerful it is. But another thing that's coming out of it is people are realizing that in this modern world of cell phones and instant gratification, that the gratification that they're seeing in their own families that they didn't notice before um, is a very powerful thing. There is no substitute for it. There is no substitute for it. So I am excited. People say this is so depressing. The amount of loss is depressing. But I think it's a wake-up call in this country and the world to not only the environment, but to the choices we're making health-wise.
Hmm.
Uh, somebody once said to me, "How many years have you been walking?" I said, "I think I started when I was 2." I think that exercise isn't something you just start at 80.
Yeah.
I don't I don't think about it. I, it's as much as getting a good night's sleep and eating right as it is for me to exercise. I've just always done it.
And tell us your routine.
Okay, I don't set alarms now that I'm retired, or kind of retired. Um, I get up my routine is almost the same. It's kind of boring. I have Cheerios every day with walnuts, craisins, half a banana, and just a dollop of yogurt on it. That's what I have every day. I love it. I don't know why, but I get used to it. That's what's kept me moving. The saying that comes up in my head is get over your bad self. If you think you've got some problems, everybody does. Just get out and ask anybody. We all have problems. And how many of us want to be around the person that's rant, rant, you know? I don't mean that we can't be sympathetic. We can be sympathetic. But if we have a problem, fix it. Fix it. If it's diet, diet. If it's drugs, get some help. Whatever it is, you are responsible for you. So can I help you? No, I can't. Can I tell you that I'm grateful for whatever reason, for the choices I've made? I am, because it's kept me happy and healthy, and I'm there for my kids and my grandkids, and I'm grateful for that. And I am taking very good care of myself. I'm not afraid to die, not even a little bit. Um, but I don't want to die of the coronavirus. So I'm making sure that I am going to miss being with the family tomorrow and Easter, which is hard. But I'm trying to make the right decisions because the longer I live, the more time I have with my grandkids.
Yeah. And I've noticed you talked about having a sense of awareness of your body and controlling yourself to get the outcome that you want. And that's what I've noticed in a lot of my experiences is you have the illusion of control outside, when you're working on a project with a team, or especially with me with film. There's a lot of people telling other people to do, and there's a director who controls the how things are implemented. But that's all. It's all fake. Like it takes all those people working together in order to make it happen. But the only thing that we can actually control is our bodies and what we choose to the things we choose to consume, whether it be research or whether it be the food that we eat. It's that's what we have control with. It's what we choose to consume for ourselves. And after knowing that, it's like, gosh, like it makes me feel a little bit more calm that I have this place that I can have control with. Like it's pretty cool when you think about it.
I see a lot of people today taking care of their bodies, and I see a lot of people abusing them. When you think that our nation, the United States of America, um, is number one in the world for obesity, for example, that I think that's sad. And a lot of it's related to fast foods and what have you. But my goal isn't to lecture that. What I see is a lot of people putting a lot of time into taking care of their bodies and forgetting their soul. And no matter what, if you say that, it sounds like you're lecturing. I'm just saying it's all part of you, that you can't separate the two. That when I say that my faith is a part of me, it's not something I think about. It isn't meditation. I've done it my whole life. It isn't something all of a sudden it's kind of a in thing to do now. People talking about the planets are lined up. Well, hello, they've been lined up since the beginning of time. This isn't something new. Um, do we need to take care of our universe? We do. It's our responsibility as human beings. And although I do think the dogs of the world are being dressed up for taking over humanity because they'll have the latest outfits. when humans are gone, we got our dogs all ready to go here. They about do everything humans do nowadays. But in getting back to being a little more serious, I don't lose sleep over any of these things, but I do. Um, my prayers are focused on them. That people will get back to what's important in life, and that's what we learn from catastrophes, hopefully.
So that actually kind of comes to my next question. It's a two-part question, kind of related, but it's kind of like a positive and negative spectrum. You talked about I don't lose sleep over things. What is there anything that you do? It keeps you up at night. You do lose sleep over.
It's usually not anything about me. It's if my kids are hurting, or if they're going through a struggle, or making bad choices. It hurts.
And
It'll keep me.
how do you sleep with these things going through your mind?
I put on, well, there's more than one thing I do. Um, Sometimes I'll put on maybe something that's light on TV and just put the timer on it, and the next thing you know, I'm sleeping. But a lot of times I'll put on not iPads, iPods, and listen to Bishop Robert Barron and Bishop Sheen. I mean, as children, we watched Bishop Sheen in black and white on TV, and he's every bit as impactful, and his message is every bit as powerful today as it was when I was a child. It's funny when I think back. We would watch Bishop Sheen as a family of little kids and then talk about what he just talked about. I mean, can you imagine saying to kids today, we're going to listen to Bishop Sheen and we're going to have a chat? I mean, it wasn't quite that formal even when I was a child, but we all loved Bishop Sheen. So you can still get him on YouTube, and he still gives me comfort when I listen to him.
That's nice to know.
Sometimes I listen to Oprah, but she's not necessarily my first choice because I would pick the other two first.
And so the second part of the question is, what gets you up in the morning?
Sometimes it's the skateboarders outside my window. What gets me up? I don't know. Sometimes it's the alarm if I have it set. Mostly I don't.
What gets you up ready for the day?
The sun, the rain, whatever. It's another day I'm alive. Thank you, God, I'm alive. I get another day. Yeah, I have a lot of joy. I feel joy. I feel peaceful. I don't feel angst. I'm not saying I never feel angst, but I think I have this silly routine because I live alone. So when I get up, I go to the mirror and I peek around the corner and I go, oh, okay, not so bad. Because sometimes I have allergies and my eye puffs up on the left side more than the right. So I go, oh, okay, well, you're doing okay. And then I go and put my coffee pot and I come around the big mirror and I go, hi, good morning. How are you today? And I get myself laughing at myself. Now, there you go. That's a weird thing. But I think it's part of it's living alone, and I'm my own best friend. I'm not saying this 1 ounce of being conceited. I like me. I think we all should like ourselves. I always think that it's been commanded, love your neighbor as yourself
Hmm.
for the love of God. You're supposed to do that. So I don't see that as vain. But I think more people need to love themselves. Because if you love yourself, then you have love to give. I have no problem, um, and never have. I mean, it's, I don't know that I was the best nurse that ever walked the floors of the hospital, but I was one of the nicest. I
Hmm.
mean, I always treated as best I could everybody with such kindness. I I used to volunteer to take some of the patients that others, a lot of them because they were worked harder than I was. I only worked part time as a nurse, um, and I learned so much through that experience. And one of them was a patient named Charlie at Harborview Hospital in Seattle. He was a C1, C2 quadriplegic, which means he had no left to right head movement, worse than Christopher Reeves. Um, was on a trach, I mean, not a trach, a respirator, and every single bodily function had to be taken care of by somebody. So it was hard nursing, and nurses that had a full load. Um, he wasn't somebody that they really were excited about having. I love Charlie. I had him for 18 months, my patient Charlie. And when the play Whose Life Is It Anyway came to Seattle, it's a story about a quadriplegic who made a decision to end his life, to turn the respirator off. So they came up to Harborview, the crew and the actors, and spent the day with Charlie and I to see what we did, on a routine basis so that they could improve their own acting for this play. So when the play opened in Seattle, they invited Charlie and I to go, which was quite a production because he had to have a special van and what have you. And as it's funny that it was funny to us. I'm not sure it was funny to everybody around, but before the movie started, and I mean the play started, before the curtain, and it was quiet, it's dark, and it's ready to go. All you could hear is from Charlie's respirator. And I was like, oh my God. People are looking around, and here's Charlie sitting there in his chair. Anyway.
Well, people are probably thinking this play is really realistic.
Yeah, that's right. So afterwards, they had question and answers for Charlie and I. And one of the questions they asked him, because I learned a lot in life from Charlie, but one of the questions that the woman asked him is, did the person in the play make the right decision? I was like, oh my God, I can't believe she asked him that. Because here he is, worse than the person in the play, as far as the condition that he was portraying. And Charlie said, for him, it might have been the right decision. For me, it isn't, because I have a 6-year-old daughter and I want to live to see her grow.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, Charlie, that was beautiful. But he taught me how precious life is. And my last day with him, he was being transferred to another facility, and I went in to see him, and I took him a rose and a balloon. I don't know why those two things, but he because of the respirator, they can just, and then talk a little bit. So he asked me to come close to him, and he whispered, this is emotional for me. Thank you for not making me feel like a slab of meat. I never forgot that. That made it all worth it as far as I was concerned. Um, there, nursing is a hard job. And I only did it part time, so I'm not taking too many bows here. When I look at what the health system is doing right now, there, it's really important people say thank you, because those few little kind words from Charlie made it all worth it.
It's a huge compliment.
Greatest gift I ever got. Greatest gift I ever got. Anyway, and the Charlie, I think, helped me to see the world differently.
Hmm.
That I find I have to be careful, because there are times when you're around somebody that I call them that rant, okay, and their problems are about this big, and then I think of the people like Charlie, or um, people that are trying to support a family during times like this, no work, not sure where the next, I mean, looking at the lines for the food banks and what have you. We have so much we should be giving. I mean, really, um, if every one of us, the best of us, came out right now and just gave, whether it's blood or food or um, visiting the neighbor, and I'm as guilty of that as everybody. I met somebody the other day and I said, "How long have you lived in the neighborhood?" And she said, 12 years.
Wow.
Oh my God, I am so embarrassed. I said, "When this is all over, we'll do lunch." But shame, we get in the tendency to drive in our garages and shut the door, and we don't need our neighbors. That's how the coronavirus is changing people. We're going to know our neighbors when this is done.
Mhm.
That's good.
Yeah.
My grandmother had an incredible prayer, and my grandkids are probably sick of hearing it, because it had such an impact on me as a child. And I can give you the whole thing, or I can just give you the little bit of it.
Give me what you want to give me.
Well, I will give you the whole thing then, because maybe people, when I share it with them, invariably they ask me to send it to them. But it's, "We worship you, sweet will of God, and in every way adore. And every day that we live, we learn to love you more. When times of trouble come our way, and they often do, we get on our knees, dear Lord, and turn them over to you. For good is the evil that is blessed, unblessed good is ill. All is right that seems most wrong when it's part of God's holy will."
Wow.
And I lived with that prayer in my head my whole life. And it's helped me through losing a child. It's helped me through a deaf child. It's helped me through divorce. It's helped me through the loss of a grandson. It's helped me through the choices my children make and the pain that they're going through. I know that good is the evil that is blessed. Good comes out of every evil. And you sometimes have to look for it, but it's there. So I thank my grandma for that.
Yeah. Powerful words.
Yeah, for sure.
We're coming close to the end. We never actually talked much about traveling or where you've been. I guess if you can name 3 places with examples of things that have impacted you, where would they be?
Wow. Do I have like 3 seconds or what?
No, no, like we can keep on going.
All right, so let me just, it's very easy for me in this sense. Um, I sailed from Florida to Spain on a 65-foot sailboat with 4 of us. There were a total 4 of us. I'm not going to go into all the details of the trip, um, because it would take up a lot of time. Incredible trip. I I left shore hurting, because my marriage of 26 years was over. And I don't even remember feeling scared. I just think I was running. I really think I was running. Anyway, we got into so many things happened on that trip, the majority of which were good. But one of them was a horrible storm. And we virtually, I don't know, I thought this was it because I couldn't believe that our boat could be thrown so high into the air and crash down in the sea and not break up. And it kept doing it over and over, and we were being thrown from place to place. Anyway, we made it. And bottom line, I felt that day I can get over anything. I am going to make it. I can make anything I want. I can do anything I want. I just have to know how to do it and figure it out. And that's what I did. So I traveled with Crystal Cruise Lines. I've never in my life worked so hard. I only did it for 2 months, but I had a goal, and the goal was to go to Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Beijing, the Great Wall, and I did it. And I'm grateful I did that. I also got to go to Russia, and I learned in Russia through one of the guides who was about my age, how afraid they were of Americans when she was a young girl. And I never thought of it that way. I always thought we were afraid of the Russians were coming. We dove under our desks as children at school, waiting for the Russians to come, the atomic war and all those things. And she told of a story of she was chosen to go to the World's Fair. She was 20-some years old in Canada. And when she saw how close she was to the United States, she didn't want to go because she thought the Americans would come over and grab her. And it just dawned on me, they had the same fears we did. And their concerns are just like ours in the sense of family and friends and not wanting war. And it was a major wake-up call. And I think that's the beauty of traveling, is that you learn that we're all in this world together. We just need to figure out how to make it work. And we got to stop shooting at each other and get rid of our guns. God, none of us need guns, period, unless you're a hunter. And or maybe we can go back to when the gun laws were put in and we give everybody a musket and give them a little powder and see if we can go shooting at each other that way. But whatever. And then the other trip that I took that I has had a lasting impact on me is to Africa. Spending almost 4 hours in the Maasai tribe village, just my friend and I and a driver and a guide. And in this village in the middle of nowhere, these children had nothing. And they were the happiest kids I've ever seen. And they were laughing and playing with each other. And then I find out these kids speak 3 languages. We're talking about in the middle of nowhere. They spoke Swahili. They spoke their own native language from their own little village. And many of them spoke English. I couldn't believe it. When I asked the chief what they needed, he said books. They can't get enough books. I mean, he didn't ask for shoes, he didn't ask for clothes, he didn't ask for any of those things. This is a village in the middle of nowhere that's surrounded by bushes that they put up to try to keep the leopards and the panthers and the lions from stealing their babies in the middle of the night. And this is how they live. They bring the cows and everything into the middle of the compound. I walked away from there feeling like I just got the greatest education on what's important in life. And I try to live by that. I try to live as, I don't mean like I don't have a nice condo, but I don't run out and buy new cars. I keep cars as long as they're working. I'm willing to keep them up. I try not to buy things I don't need. It just made me realize how important simplicity is and how we don't need to fill up our spaces with stuff we don't need. When we start doing that, then we should look inside our hearts and our souls to see what is it we're missing. Because
Yeah.
it isn't about this out here. Anyway, so my advice, if there was any to give before I die, is if we are kind to ourselves, we will always be kind to others too. We have to treat ourselves like we want to treat others. If you have a lot of angst and anger and bitterness and whatever, it's going to come out and spread to others. It's so much easier. Your life will be so much easier. You'll be so much more peaceful if you can get in touch with that.
Very nice words.
Thank you, Hayden.
Good job. You did it.
Did it.
Yeah, well, that was, I mean, I had a few other questions. What would you want the listeners to know? But you answered that for me.
So what's the other one?
Uh, what can people learn from your life?
You tell me.
Well, I would say you're very much a go-getter, and you're not afraid to tell people how it is. And you have said this as far as you're afraid that it comes off as you're telling them what to do. But I think even if you have any of that kind of fear, I've always known you as being somebody that still, like, that I would get mad at because she told me how she really feels, and I'd be like, God, why would Grandma tell me that? Like, she knows I wouldn't like that. And then I would think, like, well, if she knows that I didn't like that, then maybe there's a reason why she would tell me that. And I would take it more to heart. And I think there's a lot of people, I do this all the time, with, I think it's like the introverted nature of me, where it's like, I'd rather just not. I'd rather not say this because maybe it would lose me from a potential job in the future, or maybe it would, this person wouldn't like me anymore. But to be honest, all that information, all that stuff, there's this person that talked. It's this method actor teacher in Hollywood that I watched a thing on, and he says everything that you don't say, it's still in here, and that's why you see people when they're really old, they have really tense mouths. Yeah, those are people that chose not to say anything because all that tension, all that energy that you were going to let out, it's kept in, and now you can't talk.
I agree with you. Also, I have to love somebody a lot to be honest with them. You know?
Yeah.
It isn't like I'm setting, I know I've hurt people. That was not my intent. Maybe at times, not just with kids and grandkids, by the way, but at work.
So I mean, I would say you are somebody that I look up to, and I'm glad that you're my grandma. I didn't have a choice, but maybe I did.
You did. I had a choice too. I have 3 daughters that I love immensely. I have these wonderful grandchildren. Why would I possibly look back? I'm at peace with being alone. It isn't like I sit here and go, oh, woe is me. I don't do that. But I will say one thing funny. I said to my Grandma Daly one time, Grandma, why didn't you ever marry again after Grandpa Daly died? Because my Grandpa Daly died when my mom was 18, so I didn't even know him. She said, why would I do a dumb thing like that twice?
So I guess
I'll behave myself.
with my so I'll ask that question again if you have any final thoughts of what can we learn from your life, because I answered it, but maybe we can get anything that I missed.
Okay, I think it's like the domino effect. I think that what I am passing on to you today about my grandma Daly and what I am passing on to you today about me, and I didn't talk much about my mom, and my mom, but those generation of Rolling Stones that pass on, and we're learning more and more about this through DNA and what have you. Uh, for those of you that are listening to this that are related to me, a little bit of me is already in you, just like a little bit of my grandma is always in me, and a little bit of my mom is always in me, and my dad, what have you. Um, so the things that will benefit your life, take them and use them, and the things that don't apply to you, just put aside. Put aside.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I think when we die, God's not concerned about sin. I think when we die, and I don't know because he and I are not talking one on one like that, but I think he's going to say, did you live the life I gave you? Or did you work yourself to death? Or did you, um, whatever the case may be. Um, I think we need to live the lives we've been given. Um, One of the things I love about Corinne and Hayden and Brendan and hopefully in the future for Harrison and Xavier is how important it is to travel, how important it is to reach out to your fellow man. Um, Two things that impacted me in my life, actually more than two, but I'm going to share. I just realized that this is probably important. Um, when I went back to Miami to live at home for a year while my husband was in Vietnam with my 3-month-old daughter, the neighborhood had virtually converted to an all-black neighborhood. There were some whites that just weren't going to move out, and my dad was one of them. So I would be a liar to say that I wasn't afraid. And whether or not you want to keep this in is your choice, by the way, Hayden. But I realized that I had to live in that neighborhood for a year. And I went across the street and knocked on the door of the woman that lived there. We had 4 children. And she invited me in. And I was scared. Silly, but I was scared. I'm not maybe not scared, uncomfortable. Until we got talking. And Liberty City was on the other side of the invisible line, 7th Avenue. We're on 3rd Avenue. Anyway, when she got talking about why she moved, I realized that what she wanted for her children were exactly what I wanted for my Michelle. And that changed me. She had an impact on me based on that. My fear was gone because of that. And another time when, my ex was in Vietnam, we met in Hong Kong. I had never traveled to speak of. I'd never been outside the country. And I was flying by myself. I was 25. From Florida to California to Japan to Hong Kong. And that's where we were going to meet. I never let the plane out of my sight. I was so afraid the plane was going to leave without me. I was so nervous. But I got on the plane, and there was a Japanese man sitting next to me. And I was so scared because I was raised during the war when we had unfounded fears. of the Japanese. And I didn't want to fall asleep because I was scared. And I did fall asleep. And when I woke up, there was a blanket over me and he had put it on me. And that changed me too. So I have always encouraged my grandchildren to get out of the nest and fly and get to know people from around the world. Because the more we know each other as human beings, as people with lives and families and love and challenges, the less chance we're going to shoot at each other. And when I look at this coronavirus right now, I see there is no war right now. We are all, as a world, fighting the same thing. How wonderful is that? How wonderful is that? We're sharing things, respirators, whatever the case may be. And those are the changes that I welcome, that I hope come for the future of my grandchildren. I think there's hope, but I also thought there was hope after 9/11, and within no time everything was back to the way it was. So I guess if I could give any advice, it is take a look at what is a priority now that we're scared and our families' lives are being threatened. And hang on to that. That's what's important. Those are things. Doing things with your family, traveling, getting to know your fellow man, getting to know your neighbor, sharing the foods that you have, whatever the case may be. There's enough food in this world to feed everybody, and we should be a part of that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much. That wraps up this episode. Thank you to Carolyn Best for being our first guest of the show. Special thanks to Harrison Garratt for making the show's music. Tune in next week to see someone who is truly an amazing theater director, awesome actor, and doesn't mess around when it comes to playing some Yu-Gi-Oh cards. This is my good friend, Connor Brown. Thank you for listening. This is Hayden Garratt, keeping alive, live it for fun. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.